Hello and welcome to the Writing from the Womb podcast. I'm Sama Morningstar and I have Nikki with me here today. Thank you so much, Nikki, for joining us. Um,
Thanks for having me.
yeah, you're welcome. I met Nikki on Instagram, and Nikki writes poetry about the womb and about the menstrual cycle. And so she'd be a great guest on the show. So we're going to start with a poem from my Goddesses, Lovers, and Dreams book. I like to start out each episode with a poem. And this one for today is called Inside Out. I know how it feels to be turned inside out by my own mind. Eyes seeing only the back of my own head, tasting only my own tongue, swallowing my own words, hearing my voice echoing loudly inside my own empty cavern, seeing nobody else there. I weep for my loneliness, the only inspiration, the same breath trapped inside, this grotesque aberration, smelling of musky skin, tear, mold, and built up wastes. Outside, I touch everyone with nerveless tenderness, blindly bumping my vital organs against danger, spilling my blood and lymph everywhere. I wonder why I'm tired and sick. There outside are the workings of my brain and heart for everyone to see but me, until something or someone with Kali's grace finally reaches in, grabs my nose, and pulls it out my anus, shaking me hard, till I finally realize where I've been. So that's the poem for today. And this isn't some this I wrote this a long time ago and had that good shake from Kalima and haven't gotten turned inside out since then, but I know many people might relate to that experience of
Mm-hmm.
being inside out and upside down, especially nowadays. I mean, if at any time I did feel that again, it'd be right about now with the way things are
Yes.
going in the world. Um, and so, yeah, so there's our opening poem, just expressing how sometimes things can feel totally inside out. So I'm curious if you have any reflections around that, and if you'd like to introduce yourself some more about your poetry and your work, and
Perfect.
what that is for you.
Yeah, so that just reminded me of where I kind of started this journey. It was a little bit of a um, spiritual journey, and my spiritual teacher calls it a dismantling. Like you kind of need to be taken apart before you get put back together again. And your poem kind of brought that up for me. Because the dismantling is part of the process. So I kind of went through that maybe 5 years ago or something, where I was kind of moving countries and, in a different place physically and a different place emotionally, and just trying to rebuild my life and answer the question, who am I, right? And what is my purpose here? And so I felt like I had a book that I wanted to write, but I didn't know what it was. I don't know if that was your process as well, that you just started writing and didn't know what it would look like in the end. So I ended up writing this book called She Dreams When She Bleeds.
Mm.
And it is a self-published book about the menstrual experience, and it also has quite vivid illustrations inside of it, that some artwork that I did as well to accompany the poetry, that are all done by alcohol ink. So they're quite vivid and quite beautiful inside as well. But one of the people that really inspired me to write this book was my daughter. And part of my dismantling and getting put back together was I had all these expectations of, what having a child would be like, and um, you know, she came in and she was just her own person. And I wanted to make sure that I fostered, you know, kind of a period positive environment for her. And I didn't know how to do that because I didn't know very much about periods yet. So that was just, she was only 2 at the time, but I just kind of was curious. I had that little whisper inside me, and I was curious about menstruation and um, why it could be a good thing, although, you know, popular culture and the memes online often indicate that it's just annoying and it's not something of value. So I just went on my own little journey of investigating, and
Through
I
poetry writing? Was that a writing journey that you did?
yeah, of course, like um I would write down my reactions when I saw something that I felt, or if I talked to someone. Like I went to a poetry reading and I talked to someone, and she kind of was dismissive, and she kind of said, you know, this has all been done before. There's a lot of poets in the 70s who have already addressed this topic, and you're not the first one, and you know, it's already kind of old news. And I was like, felt kind of mad about that, and I wrote some of the poetry in response to that, and just things that I would read online about people complaining, and yeah, just
So,
my reaction in my body that I felt was coming out through writing.
mm, so did you include some of these early explorative poems in your book?
Yeah, well, one of the poems that I wrote that was kind of inspired by a little bit of righteous anger, and also a little bit of the spoken word poets that I saw on, like I saw one YouTube style, and I kind of had that rhythm in my head, you know, of the spoken word poetry. And so um, I wrote one of these about just kind of the response to the righteous anger that we can all feel when our needs are not allowed to be accommodated because of schedules, because of just the way our society is set up. Um, so this poem, none of my poems are titled, but it's more written as a spoken word poem. No one outright says it, that we shouldn't listen to our bodies, that we should ignore our natural rhythms, but here's how it happens. First, we go to school as a child, and then we can't eat when we want to or use the toilet when we want to. We can't take days off when we want to. We get accustomed to ignoring our bodies, and then we get our periods and our lives get busier. I can't miss that exam. I can't miss that soccer game. I can't miss work. Having your period is not a good excuse, and the tampon companies told me that I should not have to miss out because I am leak proof, and this tampon is one for active girls. And now I don't even know how to listen to my body. It's been decades since I have actually let my body lead the way. And maybe the doctor can help me decode, because now my body hates me and my period hates me. Your period doesn't hate you, it just wants to talk.
Wow, such a potent switch at the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, where did that voice come from? Right? And that's such a curious, like, everyone can relate to that experience. This is how it starts. And I guess it's kind of a returning to the voice from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Almost like we were talking about before, the dismantling, like you're
Mm-hmm.
coming into the world, you're coming into menarche, you know, your first period, and um, you're just learning, and then you kind of go back and you have to relearn.
Mm-hmm.
Like once you kind of awaken to the fact that of this menstrual wisdom, you kind of have to relearn some of the things that um, and question your assumptions, and um, maybe maybe what you were taught wasn't the most highly conscious version of what could be possible,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. And then this idea that your period doesn't hate you, it just wants to talk. Right? Like, what does it have to say? That brings up all these questions of the body being able to talk, the period itself being able to talk, the womb being able to talk, if we listen, right? So it just,
Yes.
in that one line, it's dismantling this and reconstructing a whole new paradigm, which isn't new to me or you, but to readers or listeners, it can be quite new, you know. Even though that person who talked to you about, who made that comment that you mentioned earlier, that this isn't new, people have already written about this. Well, we still need to be writing about it, is my response to that. And I'd be curious to hear
Yes.
what your response to that is, because we're still suffering from the oppression and suppression of menstruation and all things womb. And so I'm
Yeah, of
curious,
course.
I wonder if you have the poem on hand that was your response to that person.
Sure. Yeah. So this is the last poem in the book, and I wrote this directly kind of after I was kind of integrating what she said. And this is the poem I wrote. We are not finished discussing menstruation, telling our stories of menstruation, elevating our menstruation. We have not even started.
That's just saying it right there, straight out, isn't it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we need to get up on the top of a building or a mountain or something and just shout that, chant that together, you know,
Yeah,
or on the steps
right.
of some government official, you know, building or something. Have
Yeah,
not even
because I do really feel like this is just the beginning of this whole movement and this whole kind of consciousness about menstruation, womb wisdom, um, body wisdom. I think it is just the start, and we haven't even really collectively scratched the surface yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this topic just needs to grow and grow and grow, and we can nourish it and nourish it. Wonderful. Well, so I'm imagining you have other poems in there that are nourishing that conversation, that are bringing up different aspects of,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm curious to hear the poem, you know, the poems, or maybe a particular poem when what your period was telling you began to talk to you. And
Sure,
perhaps
yeah.
you've written poems where you've given voice to your period and what it was saying to you, or your womb and what your womb's saying to you.
Yeah, so one of the things that really came up for me was how beautiful it is to be able to see this external manifestation of our body and our blood, and it's um, something, the rhythm of it is so beautiful. So um, that's one of the things that I really was feeling in my body, and just the amazing things that I was learning about, um, that we ovulate from, the symmetry that we ovulate from first the left ovary 1 month and then the right ovary the next month, and that it
Mm-hmm.
alternates,
Right.
and just the rhythm of it, that actually the word, I think the word menses is the roots, the same root as the word measure, that was the original um, way that we started to measure time. So I wrote this kind of in response to that. Even if you don't think your blood is beautiful, can you appreciate the complexity, the symphony that is our hormones, your whole body coded into every single cell? Can you appreciate the symmetry, left ovary, right ovary, left ovary, right ovary, the egg rolling down that red carpet? Can you appreciate the rhythm, the millions of blood cells falling away, then rebuilding over again, the faithful repetition month in and month out? Even if you don't think your blood is beautiful, can you appreciate it all the same?
Mm. So this voice, when I listen, it sounds like you're asking me, can I appreciate it, right? You're asking somebody outside yourself. But if I hear it as perhaps the voice of your womb asking you to appreciate it, is that how you experienced it? It was asking you to
Yeah.
appreciate it? Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
how I kind of wrote it in different perspectives. Sometimes it's like in the first person, can I do this? And sometimes it's in, can you do this? But really it's talking about myself
Hmm.
and my own journey.
Right. And then
Um,
expanding that out to include the listener because it might speak to
yes,
them as well. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. Um,
So
Actually, and then,
go ahead.
okay, go ahead.
Well, I'm curious what you were going to say.
Oh, I was just gonna say this is a similar poem, but it's written in the first person, the I. So I just noticed that, and when I was translating it, sometimes I use I and sometimes I use you, and I can't really explain why. In some cases I've done I, and in some cases I've done you, but
Hmm.
that's just kind of how it came out.
So you're translating, what do you mean by translating? Are you writing poems in a different language first?
This book has been translated into Portuguese
Ah,
by some of the moon mothers in Brazil, some of the beautiful moon mothers down there. They contacted me and they've translated it into Portuguese. And then I took on my own project to translate it into Spanish. And I worked with a beautiful lady named Daniela, who's she's just in love with words. And she helped me translate into Spanish.
oh,
So,
beautiful. Okay, so it
yeah.
was written in English, but you've been translating it into other languages. Gorgeous.
Yes.
So my question is, what has the menstrual cycle taught you about the creative process itself of writing poetry, writing a book, putting a book together, publishing a book, all of that? Because the menstrual cycle
Hmm.
has so much rich wisdom just in its biology. And if you have any poems about writing itself, often poets write about writing poetry and write about, the writing process. But if not, I'd love to hear your reflections just in general about that, about the writing process and how the menstrual cycle teaches us and gives us wisdom about that.
Yeah, so I guess like the big revelation about the menstrual cycle and about my life in general was that um, it's not like it's not a linear progression. It's like cyclical. And so I would see that in my writing, that at certain times of my cycle, I was able to write more, or I was able to access different parts of myself in different times of my cycle. And then even like all the artwork was done within like a burst of like a few weeks. And that was just like kind of like an inspiration, and actually most of the poetry was done like in a burst in like within like 1 or 2 months. um, and it's just the creative cycle is just that, it's a cycle. And then after I was done writing, it was just kind of like, and I released it, I wasn't able to really like spend a lot of time promoting it. I was just kind of at the bottom of the cycle. And I was kind of not interested in talking about menstruation for a few months. And then, I kind of cycled back up and was able to talk about it more again. But it's not something that it's really like a rational, okay, I'm going to make a schedule and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It was more of a definitely a cyclical process. And I was able to, because of what the menstrual cycle taught me, I was able to accept that much more easily, um, than if than before I had accessed this knowledge. And yeah, it was wonderful because I was able to produce it over like kind of a longer period of time. I think it was like 6 or 8 months or something that I was really working on it. And I was patient with myself and allowed myself the kind of space and time to work on it and understand that every day is not my most creative day, and I'm not gonna, be able to produce this all in one day. So it was definitely like kind of a, you know, representation of what was going on, like the menstrual cycle and then the creative cycle. And it was definitely all connected.
Yeah, it sounds like some of the things that the menstrual cycle taught you about the creative process was that things have their own rhythm and timing, just like the menstrual cycle does, and that you don't have to impose some external rhythm and timing. In fact, that wouldn't feel very good to something that has its own life. And
Mm-hmm.
it gave you a sense of listening to the life and the rhythm, the natural rhythms in that process. At least that's what I'm hearing you say. It's making me reflect on my own um, creative process. That's what it feels like to me when we receive that inspiration. It's like we're breathing in the soul of a creative something that wants to be birthed into the world, just like a child. And it's going to have its own rhythm and timing and needs, and it's going to ask us for different things at different times. And we can, if we try to impose what we think it should be on it, then that takes the life out of it. Whereas if we nourish it to have its own rhythm, nourish its rhythms, honor its rhythms, listen to its rhythms, and, you know, let it have its own life, then it becomes this living being that we've mothered into existence, right? That we've birthed
Yes.
into existence. And
Yes.
and there's so many different phases of that, whether it's the menstrual cycle or the pregnancy and birth process that starts to inform, like creating a book that actually becomes a physical object in the world. There's the whole, I'm curious if you had times where, like, maybe you had the time of having that first ecstatic revelation of the conception of the idea of the book, of like, wow, I'm going to make this book, and I'm really inspired, and it's going to be like this, and it's going to be like that, and okay, it's happening now, right? And that's usually that, the conception of the book. And then sometimes there's a period of it's it's happening, but it's in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
You can't feel it, nothing's moving around yet, but it's there. And maybe
Yes.
you have conversations with it, and you can feel it growing inside you until you have that quickening where suddenly you can feel it starting to move around inside you. And all the different parts of pregnancy and birth we can
Mm-hmm.
recognize as parts of the creative process, whether it's creating one poem or a whole book or whatever it might be. I'm curious what your reflections on that might be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that I see all these processes in pregnancy and birth, and then also as a parallel to nature itself. Like that also inspired me, like seeing some of the same rhythms and some of the same um, uh, just processes going on, reflected in nature and reflected back in my own um, birth and pregnancy. And I like how you said you have to nourish it, and there's definitely times of quickening, and um, that's perfect language for the creative process as well. Yeah, I'm just thinking back to my own birth, and something that's just so special. I mean, I wouldn't trade this experience of putting this book together for anything. It's such a cool experience. I'm so grateful that, you know, they say like kind of sometimes ideas come through you
Mm-hmm.
and not from you. So
Right. Well, I mean, the fact that you had no training or awareness, you hadn't been studying about menstruation,
no,
your
not at
daughter was two
all.
years old, you're like, I want my daughter to have a positive experience of her period when she's 2 years old. Like most moms, they don't even start thinking about that until their daughter's turning 9, 10, 11, 12, if then, right? But
Yeah,
that, okay,
right.
this is impending and I'm going to have to educate my daughter about this. But you're like, she's 2 years old, how do I prepare for this? And I'm curious about how writing, the writing of these poems and this book, how that's influenced what, you know, what you've done with your daughter around that. Like, do you read her these poems? Do you tell her stories? um, how have you prepared her to have positive feelings about her periods?
Yeah, so I just am open about it. Like I just talk about she's 4 now, or she's almost 4 now. So she's a little young to read these poems specifically, but I am actually working on like a children's book that's like a rhyming, like
Oh my goodness,
more
really? Do you
more
have
accessible.
excerpts of that you can read to us?
Oh yeah, sure. I can.
Oh,
It's on my computer, but it's not as sentimental, but it's more straightforward.
uh-huh.
But I wanna do kind of almost like a series of um, I wonder if I can find it here. Yeah, it's not as sentimental. It's just like a rhyming little. I'm calling it Once Upon a Period.
Oh my goodness, I love it. Oh my
Do you
goodness.
want me to read the whole thing? It's pretty short. I'll
Yeah,
read it.
I do.
So June yells, "Mummy, oh mummy, oh mummy, come here." Mummy says, "Hello, sweet June. I'm in the bathroom, my dear." June stops and she wonders, "Hey, what is that red that I see?" Mummy laughs and says, "That is blood and that came out of me." June is worried. "Are you okay, Mummy? Did you get hurt or fall down?" Mummy says, "No, I'm fine. That blood means my period has come round." Period? What's that? June has never heard that before. She follows Mummy so that she can hear more. Mummy explains it happens once a month, plus or minus a few days, and usually for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days it stays. June asks, "Does it hurt?" "Usually my cuts hurt when they bleed through the skin." And Mummy replies, "It shouldn't hurt much. It's not a cut, it's lining within. Every month my uterus thickens to make a soft baby bed, and when there's no baby, that lining can shed." June says, "Well, I don't want that to happen to me." "I hope it does," says Mummy. "I'll tell you why and you'll see. Getting your period means you're healthy and strong. It means your body is normal and that nothing is wrong. Lots of doctors and healers think periods can tell us a lot. It's a vital sign, like an alarm, in this body we've got. In some places, the first period calls for a big celebration. There's a big party and fancy clothes like a royal coronation. But usually when I have my period, I need to live slow. I like to have tea, walk outside, and tell everyone no." June thinks and she finally says, "Okay, Mummy, I understand." And with that, she hops up and takes her Mummy's hand. June whispers, "That red blood looked pretty in the loo." Mummy smiles and says, "Yes, darling, I think so too."
Thank you so much, Nikki. This is such a dream come true to have somebody writing such a beautiful story like that. It really touches me. I feel like, you know, for young girls to be educated in such a beautiful way, and you just hit the notes of it just so beautifully, you know, they just rang so clear and true. Really touches my heart. You know, one of the most
Oh, I'm
powerful.
so happy.
Yeah, it's one of the most powerful, because we're not gonna. It's not gonna change if we don't start earlier. By the time daughters are, you know, young girls are getting ready to menstruate, they've already been indoctrinated, and they don't want to
Yes.
have a ceremony. They don't want to talk. You know, they're already ashamed.
Yes.
you
I
know?
agree.
And
I
so,
had that awareness too, that we have to start even younger.
oh my gosh. And so this is perfect because it's from the perspective and it's in languaging that a young child can understand, and giving a way for moms to sort of have that conversation with the young child and introduce them, and in a fun, rhyming, playful way. And oh my
Hmm.
gosh, one of the most um, potent moments for me around this, that made me feel how close to my heart this issue is, how to educate the young ones. I don't have a daughter myself, but I've always wanted to support moms with this. Is I
Hmm.
go to a yearly retreat in the woods. It's all women, and some bring their children, and the young girls um, have the opportunity to have their menarche ceremony there. And the ones that have been coming every year have seen the older girls have their menarche ceremony.
Okay,
And
beautiful.
so one year I was there, and there was a younger girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and and two of the older girls had had their menarche ceremony, and now they were being celebrated in the main ritual of the gathering, right? And they had come forth, and the main priestess was, giving them each a gift. And this little 4-year-old girl sitting next to me says to her mom, "Mom, is she a woman now?" And her mom, and I was
Oh,
just like,
so
"Oh,"
special.
right? Because now she's having an experience of these older girls that she's looking up to being celebrated, and that is deeply influential for her, right? Because
Yes.
nowhere else is that happening, perhaps, in her life. And so, and then, how do moms deal with that, unless they had an older sister or whatever,
Yes,
but for that older
exactly.
sister.
So it's just so many, it's like 100 little things that's going
Hmm.
to form her worldview around it,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
it's really something that we have to elevate for everyone, not just, you can't, maybe the parents have more of an influence, but we need to elevate it culturally and collectively, right?
Mm. And
That's so
so,
beautiful, though, that there's a ceremony.
yeah, and I've talked with other people on the Womb Centered Healing podcast. I had an interview recently with a woman in the UK who started um, a group process with other moms that started when their daughters were much younger, and met regularly together with the moms and the daughters, and with the aim of preparing them for menstruation, but wasn't always just focused on that. It was, initiation into womanhood. So there was lots of different things that they did to prepare
Mm.
these girls for becoming women. And that was really beautiful to hear about that. She wrote a whole book about that too. So a lot of people are starting to recognize, and if you wrote a book about how to, like, once you go through this process with your daughter, maybe as you're going through it, because you might write another book. I mean, it sounds like you're ready to write a series of these children's books. You might write another one for when for when daughters are a little older.
Yeah,
Okay, so
perhaps. Yeah,
this is
you never
definitely
know.
right. This is definitely 2 3 year old kind of languaging, right? Well, there might be one for 6 or 7 year old girls, and there
Hmm.
might be one for 9 10 year old girls, or girls right on the threshold there. Like, there might be a
Hmm.
whole, and I feel like a lot of our folk tales where the young girl pricks her finger and 3 drops of blood fall into the well,
Mm.
and then she
Yes.
goes on a journey and meets spirit guides and all these things, and gets ethical lessons, and has a transformation, and like that. These are all
Hmm.
preparatory stories,
Mm.
and all the mythologies that we have of, like, for example, Persephone going to the underworld and eating 3 pomegranate seeds, and
Pomegranates,
all of
right?
this. If we reframe, so
Hmm.
a lot of the stories have been sort of appropriated by patriarchal ideas, and
Hmm.
so um, you know, I'm rewriting the story of Persephone and including that in my book, where she's not raped by Hades. She falls in love with Hades, and you know,
Mm,
he's not a terrible man that's, you know, abusing her. He's a wonderful man who helps people in the underworld, and she wants to go and do that too. And then she's initiating her daughter into womb wisdom in the story.
mm,
And so we can reclaim these mythologies and these stories to be
mhm,
really positive and healthy, and to demonstrate a healthy approach to the womb and to menstruation. So thank you so much for doing that. I so appreciate that, and I can't wait to see other books that you write, like this, and other
yeah.
poetry that you write. So I'm so glad we got to meet. And so, where's the best people to get in touch with you if they want to? Best place for people to get in touch with you if they want to get a
Um,
hold of your books and keep.
yeah, so all the books are self-published on Amazon, and then on Instagram, I post there, you know, a couple times a week. So I'm not like an everyday kind of person, but I'm on Instagram at Nikki Tajiri.
Okay, Nikki
And
Tajiri,
mm-hmm,
Nikki
yeah,
T
T A
A.
J I R I.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
Nikki Tajiri,
Mhm.
and those who want to learn more about writing from the womb, I have weekly writing from the womb workshops on Saturdays and Sundays, and you can find them at the Womb Centered Healing Temple at Eventbrite, as well as Event Combo. That's where I'm hosting these events from, so you can sign up there. So go to the Eventbrite or Event Combo website and look for writing from and look for writing from the womb or Womb Centered Healing Temple if you want to see all the events that are going on there. So, all right, thank you so
Thank you so
much for
much.
joining us, and
So perfect.
we'll connect very soon. Take good care, and that's all
Thank
for now.
you.